One of the problems that councils can face, and especially adjoining councils, is when there are facilities or development opportunities that can benefit the whole community of both councils. If we have too much of a small focus on just our own council, it can really limit the growth potential. There are often different cultures in the different councils. For example, in our case, we've got Nelson, which has very much got an urban focus, and we've got Tasman, which has very much got a wider district focus. So the two are quite different. And so for us here, that was the cultural thing that we had to overcome to develop Saxton Field.
I see around the country a number of examples where things could be perhaps done better if there was a bit of talking at an earlier stage or agreement between the councils. Well, the relationship between Tasman District Council and Nelson City, it's like most councils that border each other. We have our high points and our low points, and there are times when the two councils don't get on and there are various issues. But on this particular project, Saxton Field, we have an excellent relationship with staff and full cooperation from at a political level from both councils, and complete buy-in from the community. So I think this is an example of how we would operate in the future. It's been an excellent model. We believe we have a wonderful regional facility which is catering for all sorts of sports. For example, in the stadium here we have basketball, netball, volleyball.
Hockey turfs, and we've got water turfs. They're the new modern type of turf, excellent for all weather. There are softball diamonds. I think we've got 4 internationally recognised softball diamonds.
We've just completed an all-weather athletics track, and the cricket oval, we've just had that up and running for a year, and that's been built to international standards, so hopefully we can get some big games in there. We'll be putting in a skateboard track and an archery range, table tennis complex on the side, and table tennis operates 7 days a week, 24 hours a day.
We're going to have a cycle velodrome. We've got quite a few football fields, and we've got excellent netball facilities.
But we're also developing the area for passive recreation as well, somewhere where people can come and just have picnics and playgrounds and beautification, horticultural enhancement of the streams and ponds that we've got here. So it's an all-round facility, really.
There was a huge amount here established before the community really were aware of how much we've got, and it's really just now that the whole community is aware of Saxton Field, aware of the tremendous value it is, and the regional benefit and the real economic benefit that is for our region, because by having these facilities in the form that they are, people can come in from outside sports codes, national events and even international events, and we can host them in the region. I think it was Mr. Matthews came to the council and said, I've got this land here, would the council like to buy it, and I think they bought it for $1, and develop it over time for a sports facility for the region. Nelson City started off doing that, but rapidly came to realise that this was going to have very good value for the people of Richmond and Tasman, as well as the people of Nelson. And so quite soon after they'd started to develop it, we then started to talk about how can we do this together. And so we formed what I think was a pivotal step, and that was a joint working group of councillors and staff from both councils to say how can this be done. They recognised that it was a regional facility and it should be contributed for by both. And so once that was done, they worked out a plan, and then they discussed how can we fund this, and we've developed a funding formula which is based on several different things, but it's where the facility is, and it's also how much of the population in that area is going to be served by Nelson and by Tasman. And so the percentages aren't exactly the same. Nelson contributes a little bit more than Tasman, but it recognises that a lot of Tasman's population lives further away. So it's been agreed by both councils that it's a fair mechanism to raise the money, and then it's a matter of raising it over time rather than doing too much all in one hit. And so that's been a real winning combination for us. So we've had long ago the discussion about, is it a regional facility? Yes. How can we fund it? Work that out, and then a program to develop it over time.
The critical aspect was that we needed to draw up a set of guidelines of how we would solve the hard questions, and that process formed our regional funding forum, which we put all of the projects to and determined, first of all, is it a regional facility? And if it's a regional facility, what percentage should the sporting bodies contribute, and how we split the remainder between the two councils. And obviously, with two quite diverse councils, that's quite complicated. For Nelson City, it's relatively simple, in that most of us from Nelson City live within easy access of Saxton Fields, for example. But in Tasman, it's a huge district which stretches right down to Murchison and as far as Golden Bay. And their access to Saxton Field is somewhat inhibited. So we need to sort out what's a fair split, because if you're living in Golden Bay, you don't necessarily use Saxton Field as frequently as someone from Nelson. So we have a weighting system on that, and that crosses over into the contribution. So that's quite a good system that we use. I think one of the key factors is that it's not binding on the councils, and so they don't feel obliged and they don't feel as though it's compulsory. So they still have the freedom. They can choose not to subscribe or not to take part, but in every case they have. In every case they've supported the recommendations, and it's been hugely successful. Well, the reason Saxton Fields has been so successful has been really because of the relationship between the staff, between the two councils. We've had a complete agreement between the parks people from Tasman and the parks people from Nelson, and those staff have been here a long time. And it's the relationship and the strength that has held it together. At times, politicians differ, but right through this process, we've had great support from staff from both councils.
One of the keys is to be able to have a really good connection point between sports trusts and local councils. And with our sports trust, we cover Kaikoura, Marlborough, Nelson, Tasman and Bulla. So we've got 5 different communities. And what's been really important in the last couple of years, we've had a really good communication with each council, and that starts to overcome some of the hurdles. What can often happen is a council might think, actually we can deliver that for our communities, and it minimises the impact that the regional sports trust can have. And in this case we've been having a really good connection between those 5 councils and the sports trust. Either elected representatives, mayor or councillors from Nelson and Tasman, or to go through to Andrew Petheram at Nelson City or Lloyd Kennedy at Tasman District, 2 of the key staff members involved in Saxton Field. We would be really happy to help any time for people developing up a project, working out how to work together on a project like this.
I think the main message to go out to other councils is that the critical thing is communication right at the beginning, and do your consultation with all your stakeholders, including other neighbouring councils. Get that sorted out before you start, and determine what you want to do on a shared regional basis. And I think that's critical. You end up with better facilities, function much better, and they'll be cheaper per ratepayer.
In our region in Nelson and Tasman, we've got about 35 various things that we are working on together, shared services in about 35 areas, and all of them give a commercial benefit and a benefit to ratepayers. And I think Saxton Field is an excellent example of, by identifying a potential facility right up front and working on it together. And I think one of the riders I would suggest is councils should try and avoid one council developing a concept or a project and developing it up and then saying, oh, and can to the next council, and can you pay for it? We're far better off, if, as we've done here, to have a joint working group where both councils are working together to develop up the proposal, and that's when we get the best outcomes.